You ever notice how some people in Hollywood, man, they play these deep characters, these tortured, questioning, searching souls, and then you meet them or you read about them and you realize that's not just acting, that's them. That's their real internal world bleeding through the screen. Leonardo DiCaprio was one of those dudes. He wasn't just performing, he was processing something. Every role, from The Revenant to Inception, it felt like he was wrestling with the universe. Like the guy wasn't content with just fame or Oscars or girls. Nah, man, he was chasing truth, and that's rare as hell in Hollywood. You can't fake that kind of energy. You can't fake that kind of stare, that searching look he always had. You look at DiCaprio, and he's been in that world since he was a kid, surrounded by luxury, temptation, power, all that stuff that usually eats people alive, and yet the dude somehow never got completely swallowed by it. Like he saw through the illusion. That's what always fascinated me. He wasn't trying to sell some fake good guy image like a PR stunt. He genuinely seemed to be questioning everything. You watch him in interviews, and there's this distance, not arrogance, but observation. Like he's always watching the madness of the world and thinking, what's the point of all this? That's a guy on a spiritual path, whether he admits it or not. And what's crazy, the older he got, the more it showed the activism, the environmental obsession. People thought it was just celebrity virtue signaling, but if you listen carefully to what he was saying, it wasn't politics, it was philosophy. He talked about connection, about balance, about how humans forgot their place in nature. That's not your average Hollywood eco speech. That's ancient wisdom, man. It sounded more like he was quoting from the Quran or Buddhist text than a UN climate report. He was tapping into something way deeper than activism, something spiritual, something primal. He once said in an interview that when he's out in the wild shooting the revenant, freezing, hungry, surrounded by raw nature, he felt closer to truth than he ever did in LA. That line stuck with me. Closer to truth. Because what's he really saying? He's saying that silence, struggle, isolation, that's where the real answers live. That's where you face yourself. That's not a Hollywood guy talking, that's a seeker. That's a man who's been to the top of the mountain and realized the view ain't enough. You know, man, when you look at someone like DiCaprio, you realize fame doesn't fill that void. It just makes it louder. Every time you win another award, buy another mansion, date another model, that voice inside you doesn't shut up. It starts asking bigger questions like, why do I still feel empty? Why does all this feel temporary? And I think that's what started happening with Leo. The dude was surrounded by everything people dream about, but it wasn't feeding his soul. You can see it in how he started talking later in life about purpose, responsibility, meaning, not in that fake Hollywood spiritual way, not the crystals and energy healing nonsense, but like he was actually wrestling with what it means to be human in a dying world. He spent years studying climate, oceans, indigenous cultures, stuff most actors wouldn't touch unless it was a role, but he was obsessed. I think because somewhere deep down, he knew this all connects. The environment, the ego, the soul, it's all part of the same equation. And that's something Islam, Buddhism, all these spiritual systems have been saying for centuries. The idea that humans aren't separate from creation, they're responsible for it. When I heard him talk about how the earth doesn't belong to us, how we belong to it, man, that sounded like something straight from ancient scripture. Like he was waking up to something people in the modern world forgot. It's like he looked around and saw the insanity of our age, the greed, the pollution, the distraction, and he just couldn't buy into it anymore. He started saying things like, we're not in control, we're out of balance. That's not a movie star talking. That's a man realizing that technology, fame, and power are illusions. He was chasing something beyond all that, something eternal. Maybe he didn't call it God directly, but you could tell he felt that presence, that mystery. He talked about humility, about the need for humanity to kneel again before nature. That phrase, kneel again, that spiritual language, man, that's a guy realizing that humanity lost its sense of reverence. And you gotta think, how wild is that? One of the biggest celebrities on earth, a symbol of luxury and desire, telling people to humble themselves. That's the opposite of the Hollywood script. That's rebellion on a soul level. Maybe that's why he intrigued people. He was unpredictable, not in the drama sense, but in the depth sense. You never knew what he'd say next, but you could feel it came from something real, something raw. That's rare in this world of noise. What really gets me, man, is how DiCaprio started talking about energy. Not in some new agey vague sense, but like he actually understood that everything is connected. You'd hear him talk about humanity like we're part of this living system, And when we mess it up, we mess ourselves up. He'd say things like, "We think we can conquer nature, but nature always wins." That's not just about the planet, that's about ego. That's the exact same thing ancient faiths warned about. Arrogance, pride, the illusion of control. It's crazy how close he was getting to that same spiritual truth that billions of people already knew, but he had to feel it to believe it. And maybe that's what spiritual awakening actually is, right? It's not memorizing verses or meditating in a cave. It's that moment when you realize all your success means nothing if you're disconnected from truth. And you could tell Leo had that moment. Maybe it happened out in the wilderness, filming The Revenant. Maybe alone at night, staring at the stars. Maybe after seeing some environmental collapse firsthand. But somewhere in there, you could see it clicked for him. That shift from "I'm the center of the story" to "I'm just part of something way bigger." That's the same realization mystics, prophets, and seekers have been having since the beginning of time. He once said in a speech that we're standing at a moral crossroads. People clapped because it sounded political, but it wasn't. It was existential. He was talking about the soul of humanity. He was saying we either remember who we are or we destroy ourselves. That's heavy. That's not a talking point. That's a warning. And the tone in his voice when he said it, man, it was like he knew something, like he'd seen the future, and it scared him. You can't fake that kind of sincerity. That's what made it hit. And the more he spoke like that, the more he started using language that was almost prophetic. Not religious exactly, but definitely spiritual. Talking about humility, compassion, unity. These are the same values at the core of Islam, the same ones every major faith tries to remind people of. He might not have converted or labeled himself anything, but you could tell he was looking in that direction, searching for grounding in something real, something ancient, something that wasn't corrupt. Because let's be real, Hollywood spirituality is usually just marketing. But Leo wasn't selling anything. He was genuinely trying to wake people up. And I think that's why so many people were shocked later, because they realized, damn, this guy wasn't just acting deep. He was deep. The curiosity, the questions, the need to find order in chaos, that was him. Not the celebrity, not the award-winning actor, the man underneath, the one who couldn't sleep at night because he felt the world slipping into madness and wanted to understand why. You know what's wild, man? When people like Leonardo DiCaprio start talking about this deeper stuff, the world doesn't know what to do with it. Everyone just wants to put it into a headline. Leonardo goes spiritual, DiCaprio turns philosopher, but it's not that simple. The guy wasn't chasing a trend, he was chasing meaning. And meaning is dangerous in this era, because the moment you start asking why, everything else starts to crumble. The fame, the illusion, the narrative. You start realizing that the system is built on distraction. And when you wake up from that, it's lonely. It's like standing in the middle of a packed concert and realizing the music stopped for you, but everyone else is still dancing. That's the kind of isolation that either breaks you or transforms you, and with Leo, I think it transformed him. He started to talk about legacy, not the Hollywood kind, but the human kind, what kind of footprint we leave behind, what kind of world we hand to the next generation. You could see this shift in his interviews, like the man wasn't interested in scripts anymore, he was interested in truth. You can't buy that kind of curiosity. It comes from pain, from seeing behind the curtain. And when he started quoting old philosophers, when he mentioned finding peace and stillness, it was like he was finally acknowledging that all the answers he'd been looking for were spiritual all along. He just didn't want to use that word because people get weird about it. But the essence was there, the surrender, the humility, the awareness. And here's the part that gives me chills. Right before he passed, some people close to him said he'd been talking about universal truth. He said that the world is running out of time, not because of nature, but because of spirit. He said, we've lost our connection to the source. That's not Hollywood talk, man. That's scripture-level reflection. That's something a monk or a mystic would say. And the fact that it came from Leonardo freaked people out. It didn't fit the narrative. But maybe that's the point. Maybe that's what made it so powerful. Because when someone who's seen everything, the fame, the chaos, the world, says that the only thing that matters is finding balance again, you listen. You stop scrolling, you pause, and you think, maybe he's right. Maybe this whole system we built, this culture of noise, consumption, and ego, maybe it's already collapsing under its own weight. And maybe the way out isn't in some new technology or another movement, but in something old, something timeless, something rooted in discipline, humility, and unity, the very things Islam's been teaching for over 1,000 years, and that's what makes it so powerful. He didn't preach it, he felt it. He didn't say, "I've found religion," he said, "I've found meaning." And meaning, that's the doorway to faith, to peace, to connection. It's the moment you stop asking, "What do I get from this world?" and start asking, "What am I giving back?" That's the shift he went through. That's what made his prediction, his final reflection, so haunting and beautiful, because it came from someone who lived the dream and realized that the real dream is waking up,